Go ahead.
Okay.
You guys would not do this at a wheel. I'm only doing it because you guys are sitting here. You guys would do this at your table. I'm making sure that my wheel's off and that my pedal is away. So you want your bucket to be right by you. This hand must be totally dry. And the top of this must be totally dry. Has anybody ever milked a cow in here?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't, but I imagine that it would be like this. So hand dry, top of this is dry, and you're gonna squeeze onto this. You wanna make sure that this stays dry. If it gets wet, it will slide out of your hands. I like to just kind of put the bottom of that in. I spiral wedged this so it was already in a nice cone. Get your hand wet, and you start squeezing this clay and pulling it down. So you're stretching that clay. Make sure your hand stays nice and wet. Handles dry much quicker than your cups because they're thin. So what I recommend is throwing cups one day and then coming in the next day, throwing handles, putting it in front of the handles in front of the fan for 2 minutes to maybe 4 minutes, and then they will be dry enough that you can attach them to your cups. Remember, when you attach 2 pieces of clay, you want them to be the same dryness. So if your cups are leather hard, you want this to be the same leather hardness before you attach them. So I'm going to keep working on this. I am always changing the position of my hand. If I always did it like the same way, it would take on the form of my hand, and at this point I don't want that to happen. I don't want any creases. I want it to all be nice and smooth. Now, when you make a handle, you actually don't want the handle to be round. If the handle is round and it's attached to a pot, when you're holding onto the handle, you can't grip it. So it's like your coffee cup would be like moving back and forth. Do you guys get that? Because it's round. So you need to flatten this out a little bit. It doesn't always have to be a lot. It can be a lot if you want. And I do that by kind of positioning my fingers like this. Sometimes I use my pincher fingers to get that a little bit flatter. And you'll see potters will like take their thumb and do a crease down here that you can hold on to when you're drinking your beverage. There's lots of options here. Okay, so once you have that done, you're going to get your board. And I'm gonna try not to touch this part, okay? Actually, let me just smooth it out one more time. You take it and you flip this chunk of clay over onto your board and see how this nice curve just happens? Try not to touch this. You don't wanna interrupt that natural curve. If anything, sometimes I will take this tail and just bend it a little bit in so I can get a more defined curve. Another thing you want to check is that this lines up, that it's nice and straight. You let that dry, and then, let's see, I'll grab another one. So here's one that I did last class. Ooh, that pot's wet. We can have one of those pots. So here's one that I did last class. Thanks. It's still a little bit flexible, but more or less it holds its shape, okay? So you take your knife, cut this off. You cut it off at a little bit of an angle. I'm gonna cut this other side off, a little bit of an angle. I know that it's too big right now, so I'm gonna squish it a little bit. And then you can attach it on. Talking about proportions. This handle is way too big for this cup. So all you do is go back with your knife and trim it down. Again, you want to make sure that these are the same consistency. Traditionally, people would put the thicker part, it's still too big, the thicker part on the top, but you can also play around with different designs like that.
If you do it at a large angle, can you make a more like heart-shaped curve?
You can try anything you want. So I could keep working with that until I get the silhouette that I like. That's how you pull, and then you slip and score this on. Dry these slowly. You don't want to slip and score it on and then just leave it out in the air to dry. I would cover it lightly because the handle will dry so quickly that it will crack away from the cup. So dry these slowly, lightly covered.